The history of reishi goes back thousands of years, and it's in Chinese art, it's in Chinese mythology. It's called the mushroom of immortality. It's called the good luck mushroom. Reishi not only has very high levels of beta-glucans, but it also has other compounds called triterpenoids. And reishi is bitter. That bitter flavor comes from these triterpenoids, and these triterpenoids are very, very good for the liver. You want to sort of help your liver do a cleanse and work to its highest potential. Reishi is very good for the liver, besides having these immunologically active beta-glucans.
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 125, Jeff Chilton, Healing with Medicinal Mushrooms. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power. So tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Hello, my podcast family. How are you guys? Wow, it's been way too long since I've connected with you via this podcast, but you're going to be happy to hear why and the good news. So thanks to all of you for being patient and waiting for me to get my new website built. I know I haven't been so available here on my podcast and even my YouTube videos, but I've been really busy working on the future plans of Vidal Speaks, and I can't wait to tell you about them. So first, I just finished my video course, my very first video course, and I'm really excited about it. You guys know that I've asked you to let me know what you wanted to learn more about, and people are always asking me, and lately they also wrote me to tell me they wanted to learn more about supplements, like if they're necessary, and if so, which ones. And over the last 3 years of my show, the episodes that I've always done on supplements are always the most listened to. So I decided to do my first course on this topic because there's so much confusion about supplements. So go to my website, vidalspeaks.com, and you'll see that I have an Academy button at the top. And soon I'm going to offer my first paid course there. So if you're one of those people wanting to know all about it and the details, whether you should take them or not, and if so, which ones, along with so much more, you're going to be able to buy that course online. And you can listen to it as many times as you want in that section of my website. Yay, I'm so happy to have this behind me. I called the course To Supplement or Not to Supplement. Here lies the answer. And I spent hours and hours and days preparing it. And the course itself is about 4 to 5 hours, I think. I go over every aspect of why supplements and when it's appropriate and which ones are important, or at least the ones that I feel. As you guys know, this is a very controversial topic. That's why I wanted to make this my first course. But you're also going to learn about nature's law and why we're sick and the idea of suppression and how all of that is related to supplements. I'm really excited to have this huge work behind me now. And I hope all of you out there that want to know the real answers and want to have more clarity on this subject will be happy with this course. I for sure will be offering many more on many different topics. This is a way for me to get my message out to all and to make my work available all hours of the day. And that course, although it's not out yet, it ties in with my show this week and my blog post this week, because my guest today is Jeff Chilton, who's a super expert on medicinal mushroom superfood powders that help us heal and build our immune system. I love the world of mushrooms. It's really a fascinating world to learn all about. the way they communicate and how they work with our trees and our plants. They network with all of nature. It's so cool. They're truly miraculous. And when it comes to health, they're also life-changing. I've wanted to interview a mushroom expert on my show since I started. I'm so glad that I waited till now, though, because I found the truth of mushrooms from Jeff. Sadly, I learned from him, and you will too in this show, how the industry is selling products that are not truly medicinal mushroom powders. Oh, I hated to hear that. I realized that for years I was taking brands of powders that were not the real thing. Yikes, and just more money down the toilet, I guess. Geez, this is so sad to me, but it also angers me because I'm a person that really does my research, and you think you found a reputable company and that you're supposed to be getting a great product, and then you have someone tell you, nope, they don't sell real mushrooms. Imagine, though, how many people have given up taking mushrooms because they think they didn't work. This is what really makes me mad. But the good news is, now that I know the truth and I know which ones are the real mushroom ones, now I'll buy the real ones. Whew, that makes me feel better. I always love learning a good fact like that. Jeff's such a cool guy, and I really had a fun time talking with him. I think you're going to hear that when you listen to the interview because we laughed a lot. But that's what I love about my podcast, because when I connect with a guest, it's because I've researched deeply to find the guest that I really want to learn from or that I want to share with you guys. And Jeff is a gem, I promise. I can't wait for you guys to learn today all about medicinal mushrooms. But before I introduce you to Jeff, I just want to be sure that all of you out there are signed up on my website to receive my emails and updates. And that's because today I'm going to be starting to connect with you via blog every 2 weeks. I need to see how it goes, but I'm pretty sure I can maintain that schedule with consistency. But I'm hoping on the alternate weeks to shoot you a little surprise, maybe a video or a little email. But for sure, I'm going to be connecting with you every other week. And it's either going to be by like a written blog, a video, a podcast. But you need to have your email address entered in at my site so you get notified for any special offers or any notifications, like there's a blog or a new podcast or whatever. I'm also planning on doing some Facebook live streams where you can all join in, ask questions. And now you don't have to worry if you miss it because they have replays and you can just easily watch the replay. All of this is new to me, so please be patient, but I'm doing lots to try to connect more with each and every one of you. How fun that we can build our community together, right? All right, you guys, now let's go meet Jeff. But before we do, let me tell you a little bit about him. Jeff Chilton, raised in the Pacific Northwest, studied ethnomycology at the University of Washington in the late 60s and started working on a commercial mushroom farm in Olympia, Washington in 1973. During the next 10 years, he became the production manager responsible for the cultivation of over 2 million pounds of agaricus mushrooms and was also involved in the research and development of shiitake, oyster, and enoki mushrooms, which resulted in the earliest U.S. free shiitake sales in 1978. In the late 70s, he was the founder of Mycomedia, which held 4 mushroom conferences in the Pacific Northwest. These educational conferences brought together educators and experts in mushroom identification and ethnomycology and mushroom cultivation. During this period, Jeff co-authored the highly acclaimed book, The Mushroom Cultivator, which was published in 1983. In the 1980s, he operated a mushroom spawn business, and in 1989, he started Nammex, which is a business that introduced medicinal mushrooms to the U.S. nutritional supplement industry. He traveled extensively in China during the 1990s, attending conferences and visiting research facilities and mushroom farms. In 1997, he organized the first organic mushroom production seminar in China. Jeff's company, called Nammex, was the first to offer a complete line of certified organic mushroom extracts to the U.S. nutritional supplement industry. Nammex extracts are used by many supplement companies and are noted for their high quality based on scientific analysis and the active compounds of mushrooms. But you guys be sure whoever you're buying uses his product. And I'll tell you in the podcast which website for sure uses his product. Okay, now let's go on to talk to Jeff. Here we go. Hello, Jeff. I so look forward to today's show because what could be better than to speak about mushrooms? They're delicious, they're fascinating, and they're healing. So thanks for joining me today on the Vidal Speaks podcast.
I'm so happy to be here, Deborah. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh gosh, last year, or maybe it was because my show's now almost 3 years, and I've been wanting so much to get a mushroom expert, so I feel like I needed to be the mycelium and network out there to find the right person. So I'm really happy that I have you.
We're all getting connected with a mycelial network.
It is. And we got to explain to the listeners what that is because mushrooms are so fascinating. I'm not kidding when I say they're delicious, fascinating, and medicinally healing. So I can't wait to get into all my questions. You don't know me so well yet, but I have a very curious mind and I have always lots of questions, and you sound like a very patient person. So my goal is to educate, really to educate the listeners about not only the healing properties of mushrooms. I want to get into some specific mushrooms, but I want to just talk about, how they are in nature because it's so fascinating. But before we do that, you have to tell us a little bit about how did you get into mushrooms?
Well, you know what? Here in the Pacific Northwest, and I grew up in Seattle, it's really, we have lots of forests, it's green, there's lots of water everywhere, and we have a very mild maritime climate. So in the fall, the temperature is, let's say 60 degrees or thereabouts, and it starts to rain, and it's very wet, and it's a perfect climate for mushrooms. So, this area is probably one of the best areas in the world for wild mushroom hunting. And so I was able to get out early with parents of friends to do some mushrooming. And then when I went to university in the late 60s, I studied anthropology, but I still had this interest in mushrooms, so I studied mycology as well, and ended up putting together what I look back on and go, yeah, I was studying ethnomycology, which means the use of mushrooms by cultures worldwide for food, for medicine, and also for shamanic purposes. So that was my study at university, and then, of course, after university, since you don't get many jobs in anthropology, I ended up going to work on a mushroom farm, and I was there for the next 10 years.
Wow. That's so cool. I always feel like there's something about destiny because, to even though it was parents of friends that you would go mushrooming, it wasn't your parents. So there's just something, that you're born with this, innate ability to find your path. And don't you feel lucky you found it at such a young age? That's so cool that you took it with you your whole life and just built upon it, because so many people don't find their path until they're in their 60s and maybe never.
Yeah, that is so true. And I do occasionally look back on that and just kind of think, wow, what was it? But to be frank, in the 60s, we were very interested in shamanism, and mushrooms were one of those shamanic plants. And we had these special mushrooms in our area. And also, as I was studying it, I realized that they were these mushrooms, these special mushrooms, were being used still in Mexico in healing ceremonies. And that to me was just fantastic. That was just something so interesting. And ultimately, I spent a year and a half in Mexico doing some field work.
Wow. And that is a really big field. I know I even have friends that have done that kind of shamanic mushrooms for especially emotional healing and deeper spiritual development and connection. And I know that's really a whole nother show, because that is. And with homeopathy, since I'm a homeopath, we have many mushrooms in potency, of course. So homeopathy is an energy medicine. So you don't get, it's not like you're getting the same effects, but the toxic poisoning of anything or the proving of a substance will come through in the symptoms of the person that needs them. So for example, a person that may need a shamanic mushroom would have, a lot of hallucinations or vivid dreams or some kind of, like a disconnect maybe between their mind and their body, or they're leaving their body or something like that. And so homeopathy, it's like treats like. So I'm very familiar with this part of mushrooms, because to learn the remedies, you kind of already know how they're used shamanically. And I have friends that have used it with great success, but it's something that someone has to be impelled to do. And as you said, in the 60s, it was much more common probably, although I think there's still a lot of people doing that today. But it's interesting, because that's a whole nother field of mushrooms, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it absolutely is, and certainly the use of those mushrooms out there is quite widespread. We don't hear about it too much, but it's quite widespread. And these days too, with now that prohibition is slowly falling away, you've got a lot more physicians and psychiatrists and healthcare practitioners who are actually using them for people with whether it be end of life issues or addiction issues or other types of mental issues. So, and again, that's a whole another aspect. But my studies led me into all of those different areas, but ultimately put me on the path as a mushroom grower of edible mushrooms to begin with, and that was in 1973.
Wow, that's really cool. Today we're probably going to focus a little bit more on the medicinal aspects of it, not the spiritual and emotional development of those, because as a homeopath and with so many listeners out there that are interested in health and doing healthy things and building up the immune system and cleaning out the body, that's my specialty. I work a lot with people on helping them detox the poisons out of their body and to eat healthy and build their immune system. So I'm really happy to get into the part of the show where we talk about that. But I want to know a little bit more just about mushrooms. So one of the things is there any one specific culture that started with mushrooms or that uses them more than any other culture? Is it kind of each mushroom comes from a different region or culture?
Well, I've traveled extensively in China. I traveled throughout China in the 90s. Went over there every year visiting farms and factories and research institutes and going to conferences in Asia, China specifically, but other parts of Asia as well. They've been using mushrooms for food and also in their traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. So I really look at Asia as sort of the place where this mushroom culture, so to speak, was really very strong. They began to cultivate mushrooms in the 12th century. There's actually, what is so very cool, Deborah, is that in the back in the mountains of a certain area of China where they grow tons and tons and tons of mushrooms, they actually have a temple there, a Buddhist temple that is essentially for the man who was from that area, who was the first one to realize and start to grow shiitake mushrooms. That's the 12th century.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And I think the other thing too is it's always good to know the history. I just always think it's interesting because certain plants grow in certain regions and certain cultures use certain products or plants heavy in their diet when other ones don't use them very much at all. And then you can compare a lot of the health statistics in these different cultures. But one thing that I think is confusing for a lot of people about mushrooms is like, what are they? Are they a yeast? Are they a fungus? Are they a spore? I mean, are they a plant? Are they even considered a plant? So why don't you tell us, what are mushrooms?
Sure. Well, we have kingdoms out there. One would be the kingdom where there are plants, the other animals, and the kingdom of fungi that sits right in between those two kingdoms. Mushrooms are part of this fungal kingdom, and they're not plants, they're not animals. They actually, what's interesting is they share attributes of both. So mushrooms will produce glycogen, not starch. Plants produce starch as their storage carbohydrate. Mushrooms produce glycogen. We produce glycogen as a storage carbohydrate. Mushrooms also breathe in the same way that we do. They breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. But just to be specific about this organism that we call a mushroom, the mushroom is only, pretty much it's what we see, but what we don't see are the other stages. Mushrooms do not have seeds. They have spores. These spores in nature, they will be in the ground, maybe they'll be in woody tissue, but these spores, when they germinate, they will produce a very fine filament called a hypha. And when multiple spores germinate and these filaments grow out and grow together, they form a network, and that network is called mycelium. Mm-hmm. Now, this fungal mycelium, what it's doing out there is as it grows, it's secreting enzymes into whether it be the soil or the woody tissue, the leaves, all of that organic matter that has been building up out there. That's what these fungi are doing. They are, and they do it with this mycelium. They're breaking it all down until ultimately it's repurposed into humus and goes back and feeds the very organisms, let's say the trees that have been dropping all this litter down onto the ground around it. The fungi are breaking it down and feeding it back. Now, when conditions are right, and I spoke to this a little earlier, which is in the Northwest in the fall when temperatures drop, when it rains and the humidity goes up, then this mycelial network, which as it is breaking all that down, is building up nutrients, it will produce a mushroom. That mushroom, it comes up and all of a sudden we're sort of like, oh my God, where did that come from? Actually, it comes from that mycelial network that's underground that we don't see. All of a sudden, this mushroom pops up seemingly out of nowhere, and it's there for a short period of time. It might be there for 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on the temperature. And then what happens is as it matures, the gills that we see underneath that cap will produce spores. The spores will drop off on the wind. Away they go to start this whole cycle over again. So that's the life cycle of this fungal organism that we know as the mushroom.
Wow. And this mycelium, it's so spectacular because I've been so intrigued by this, but I'm very much a nature person and I like to understand things and I love plants and animals and just nature in general. And in addition to, I was like a mushroom addict when I was a kid, eating them. That was my school treat. Come home from school, mushrooms on toast, you know?
Oh, wow. Wow.
My mom was British, and that was like a very British thing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I loved mushrooms, that just eating them and not knowing much about them. But then as I got into homeopathy, you tend to learn so much about the substance, not just as a remedy, but what is it like in nature and how does it function. And when you learn about this mycelium, it's so fascinating, because there's even like, I recommend all the listeners to just put it in Google or YouTube, and you'll find movies almost about it, because it talks about how this network, they call it the Earth Internet, you know, because it's like it connects under the ground. And it connects all the trees, even trees that are far away from each other, and it helps the trees communicate. And I don't know how much of this, because you're the expert, but I've even heard that a tree will have some disease, and the tree, because of that mycelium, the tree can then communicate with another tree far away and tell it to put out some kind of hormones so that they can be protected. And if it needs to send nutrients to another tree, it's really an intricate network and very detailed how the trees and the mushrooms are co-inhabiting, right?
Well, you know what? The way I like to look at it, and I know there's been different speculations on this out there, I like to look at it in a much broader sense, because to me, that mycelium is part of a larger ecosystem. So when you're under the ground there, you have the mycelium, you have bacteria, you have other fungi, which are called imperfect fungi, which don't produce the mushroom stage. So, and bugs and all sorts of things that are working together to repurpose all of this organic matter, to break it down, to take it back into a state where it can be utilized again as nutrients for the rest of these plants and forests to grow. So to me, I mean, it's just like the root systems of trees. Can you imagine that forest and all of the roots that are interconnected there with all those trees? I mean, it's a really interesting relationship. And part of what you're referring to, too, is the fact that fungi will form what's called a mycorrhiza, and that's a symbiotic relationship with trees. And so what they do is they intermingle with the tree roots, and they will provide certain nutrients to the tree, and the tree will provide certain nutrients to the fungus. Mm-hmm. So there is this relationship there between them. But I personally think there are multiple ways that organisms communicate out there, and I personally am not a subscriber to the mycelium as internet theory. That to me is a little bit far-fetched, but you know, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. And I think the real issue is that there are a lot of things going on under our feet that we just don't know a lot about. And one of those things is this mushroom mycelium, or these mycelial networks, which are out there because, you know, in every area that we might be in, there are hundreds of different mushroom species that are in those areas with their mycelial networks all out there feeding on the organic matter. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things to know is that when those mycelial networks meet, there is a zone of inhibition, because if they could meet and then come together, well, they can only do that if they're the same species. The fact that they are different species, basically one of the parts of that is that to be a different species, you're not going to be able to mate with another species of mushroom. So there will be that zone where no, they stop right there. They don't go any further. And when mycelium grows, what's really interesting about it is that it will continue to grow until there is no more food because it's continually expanding into parts of the forest that has new food. But where it starts, if the food runs out where it has started, that will die off at that point, and it'll be the newer mycelium that has formed that keeps growing. But again, it's all dependent on the food source. And a great example of this, have you ever seen a fairy ring, a mushroom fairy ring?
No.
If in a big field, let's just say a big field of grass, sometimes you'll see a ring in the field. It could be of any different size, a ring, and it's a ring of mushrooms.
Wow.
Well, what, and they call it a fairy ring. And what's interesting about that is that at some time, for some reason, there is either mycelium or spores that start in one location in that field. Sometimes it's because they brought in new fertilizer of some sort that carried the spores or the mycelium. But from that one point, the mycelium will start to grow. And if it's in a field with no obstructions, it will grow out in a radial manner. So it'll grow out like in a big circle.
Wow.
And when the conditions are right, what happens is mushrooms form on that newest mycelium that is the outer edge. So you will have this ring of mushrooms forming in the fall, and then next year, if you go back to that same area, that ring where you saw the mushrooms, the mycelia has continued to grow, and now you'll have a ring that's, let's say, 10 feet further or 15 feet further out.
Wow.
So you can have these rings year after year, and as long as they've got an unobstructed view or an unobstructed path, they will continue to put out this ring of mushrooms every year a little bit further out.
That's cool. And I think too, everything you're saying, it just makes us realize how we're all interconnected, how we need the mushrooms, the trees need the mushrooms, our food needs the mushrooms, right?
Absolutely.
Just like we need the bees and we need,
Yes.
and this is this is where we're all so worried about the planet because so many things are getting wiped out. But I think so little people really understand about the value of mushrooms. Not only are they medicinally important to humans, but just in the ecosystem of nature, how important they are. And this is what you've been talking about. So that's what
Absolutely.
I think is so fascinating, how interconnected and codependent we all are on each other, including the fungi. But you think about it, just hearing the word fungus or fungi or fungus in general, or even mold, and I think most people wouldn't know, like, what is the difference between a mold and a fungus? Is there a difference?
Oh yeah, and that's really an important difference. And the molds, what we call molds, are a division of this fungal kingdom that we would call imperfect fungi. The mushrooms belong into a division called the perfect fungi, and the perfect fungi are ones that will actually produce what we would call a fruiting body or the mushroom. The mycelium is what we call the vegetative stage, whereas the mushroom is the fruiting stage of this organism. Now, an imperfect fungus does not produce a fruiting body. It does not produce a mushroom. It is simply mycelium, and then at some point, that mycelium in and of itself, without needing a mushroom, will produce spores. So when we see a mold, normally we're not going to see a mushroom attached to it. We see a mold that's like we look in our bread one day and it's like, oh my goodness, we've got something white that's growing on it, and maybe that white turns green. When you see that green or black on a piece of bread, what that means is that mold has started to produce spores. So if you were to take that piece of bread, let's say, and maybe tap it on something, you would see this little dust cloud come off of it. Those are spores. And so when people have these allergies and they talk about mold problems, normally what they're talking about is the fact that these fungi, the mycelium, will be growing in some damp area of their home, and then they will sporulate. So there becomes a buildup of these spores, and these spores will get in the air, and people are susceptible to and have allergic reactions to breathing in these spores. So that's where people talk about mold spores.
Right.
They're talking about the fact of these imperfect fungi that are living somewhere in their house or somewhere, and those spores. I mean, here's what's so interesting, Deborah, is that the air we breathe on a daily basis, you go outside, it is actually a soup. We can't see it because these spores are microscopic, but there are all sorts of fungal spores, bacteria. We see it occasionally if like a car drives by in a dust cloud, or sometimes in the spring we'll see the pollen that comes off of a tree in the wind, and you see this big cloud of pollen. But essentially, the air we breathe is full of all of these spores and microorganisms. And you know what? We have adapted to that. We don't live in a sterile environment. We don't want to live in a sterile environment. That's not how we work in this world. We are here. There's all of these other organisms that we are living with. I like to view us as in this sort of a dance. We're in a cosmic dance with all of these other organisms. We're cooperating. Sometimes we get out of balance because maybe we're breathing in these spores, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a problem. So what we want to do is to try and get back in balance by eliminating those spores. We can only actually adapt to a certain spore load, and then after that, if it gets overloaded, then we have difficulties. But for example, if with a mushroom farm, a lot of times mushroom farms are enclosed in houses or warehouses. If it's a farm that grows a mushroom that opens up and is harvested when it's mature, that room of mushrooms will be full of spores. And there's actually a disease out there called mushroom worker's lung. Just like a coal miner will have all of that coal dust in their lungs. There's also the same. So the issue, of course, being if you're in an enclosed environment like a coal mine or a mushroom growing house, either you have a respirator on, or you had better find another profession, because if you're breathing in those spores day in, day out, you could end up having difficulties. Not everybody is susceptible to it, but enough are that they've actually been able to diagnose it and say, hey, there's actually a disease out there called mushroom worker's lung. And that's much like the person that's living in a house, an enclosed space, and somewhere in that house, they've got a buildup of these mold spores.
So Jeff, let me see if I understand that route, because that's very common. A lot of people don't even know it until their whole family or themselves is really sick and they discover there's some kind of mold in the house. But so your comparison of the mushroom farm that produces a fruity mushroom that is a healing mushroom in itself, but at that point it's producing a lot of spores that can go in the air and cause this problem. But also the imperfect mushrooms, which are ones that don't produce the fruity mushroom, but they're still somehow producing a spore that could be somewhere in your house. So these spores are becoming numerous and filling the air. So it's the spores in general, from whether it's a fruity medicinal mushroom or one that doesn't produce a fruit, all of those spores at some point could cause people problems.
Yes, absolutely correct. You said it perfectly, because that is where a lot of the fungal issues come up. Now, there are other issues like aflatoxins with fungi, and that's aflatoxins are normally found with grains, and when we're growing millions of tons of grain and the grain has to be stored, if that grain gets wet, well, fungi, that's what they need to grow. So what happens is you get these molds that are growing in the grain, and specific molds that grow in grain will produce aflatoxins, and aflatoxins are very, very toxic to humans, and that's a huge issue for grain producers. They're testing their grains all the time for fungal contamination. They have tests that they can actually, with these tests, find out whether there are molds growing in that grain, and they're doing these tests all the time.
Well, and it's so interesting because it's such a dichotomy, because everything we're saying, it sounds so scary. Most people would be going like, oh my God, well, I'm staying so far away from mushrooms because they're producing spores, and why the heck would I want to eat something like that? Or even if you think of penicillin, look at how many lives it's saved, and yet it's a kind of mold, right? Penicillin, isn't it a kind of mold?
Penicillin actually comes from a mold. That's absolutely right. A lot of the fungal issues and diseases would come from actually breathing in the spores, and it's no different than breathing in a lot of other organisms, bacterial organisms and things like that, different types of microorganisms that can cause these. When you're eating mushrooms and you've cooked them up, you're not breathing in any of those spores, you're just consuming them, and we can't digest a spore. It's got a very hard shell. But here's a real fascinating little tip. Spores, believe it or not, they can be smooth, or they can also be rough with little rough edges. And it's those particular spores that create the most irritation in our lungs, the spores that have all the rough edges on them.
See.
So that's another kind of interesting little fact about it. But more than anything else, it's the actual number that you're breathing in that creates the problem. So a
person that has like mold allergies or is sensitive, they still wouldn't have any problems eating or taking medicinal mushrooms, right? They would just have problems with a lesser amount of the spores in the air than a person that's not sensitive.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, in fact, what's interesting is that with certain fungal diseases or fungal problems, like, for example, candida, I know herbalists that use medicinal mushrooms to treat candida. And oftentimes you'll hear there's a myth out there that, if you have candida, which is a fungus, then you shouldn't eat mushrooms.
Yeah, that's a huge myth. So that was one of my questions for you.
And that, you know what, if you were to go out there and look for any scientific research that demonstrates that, you would find nothing. It's just one of these, it's kind of like a sympathetic magic in a way that like produces like. So if you're eating a fungus, you're going to be having fungal problems, or you're going to be feeding a fungus. And this is just it scientifically and physically, actually, it's just incorrect.
Which is sad, because those mushrooms itself are so healing, even for something like candida. But then you get this myth that just gets repeated in history. One author copies it down into the book, the next author copies it down, and pretty soon it's like every book you read is telling you can't have mushrooms when you have candida. And it's like, I mean, it's a kind of the same thing with fruit. They tell you don't eat fruit, so people who have candida, they eat a plate of meat. Now, I'm a vegan, so of course that sounds horrible to me. But still, to see this unhealthy plate of meat just because they're avoiding something because of candida, it just doesn't make any sense. And you have to, you have to sometimes use a little bit of, does that make sense? You need as we say, the bullshit meter. That just doesn't sound right to me,
Absolutely right. Yes, indeed. And sometimes urban myths are hard to go away. And in fact, I haven't heard that so much recently. It used to be a big issue or big question back in the 90s. I'd hear that a lot. I haven't heard it much recently. And part of it is because I think a lot more people are aware of the fact that that's not an issue anymore. And so I don't really hear that from herbalists or naturopaths very often. They've sort of gone beyond that. And I don't know, it was just something, again, like I say, that was 20, 30 years ago. You heard a lot, but not anymore.
Right. And just to clear things up before we get into the medicinal mushrooms. So anybody out there that's listening that's sensitive or says they have mold allergies or they can't do penicillin, that doesn't mean that they can't take medicinal mushrooms like chaga or all these other ones we're going to talk about. They can still handle medicinal mushrooms, right? Or even eat mushrooms likely. They're just allergic to the spores that are in the air, and they're very sensitive to a small amount.
That's primarily what's happening, yes.
Okay. So then I know there's probably many, but there's a kind of handful of famous medicinal mushrooms. You add to it, but I know there's chaga, there's reishi, there's turkey tail, shiitake, lion's mane, and cordyceps. Am I missing any of the big ones?
Well, you know what? You definitely named the primary ones. The top four for us right now in terms of the products that are selling the most are lion's mane, reishi, chaga, and cordyceps. Those are the ones that are just flying off the shelves right now. But there are about, I would say, 10 or 12 mushrooms that have been demonstrated to have medicinal properties. And this is out of a list of maybe 270. I've got a book that names 270 different mushrooms that there has been some research to show they're medicinal. And here's the interesting part about it is that the major component of a mushroom that gives it its medicinal properties are called beta-glucans.
Right. And
beta-glucans make up as much as 50% of the cell wall of all mushrooms. All mushrooms. So all mushrooms have these beta-glucans. But what happens is that the beta-glucan has little variations in its structure, in its architecture, the way it is actually configured. So each mushroom, although they all have these beta-glucans, they can differ a little bit with each species. And there's nothing out of the ordinary about this because, for example, you think of mushrooms, well, every mushroom does not have the same nutritional value. Each species has a different nutritional value. So I could not say to you, oh yeah, all mushrooms are 20% protein. Not true. They can vary from 10 to 40% protein. So this is something to always keep in mind, and this goes back to the medicinal value. So you can eat almost any of the mushrooms out there. You will get certain benefits from it, not just nutritionally, but also medicinally. But there are a handful, up to about 10 species that have demonstrated in two ways. One, through traditional use, and that's how we determine this. We will look back at traditional Chinese medicine and go, what mushrooms have you been using? And then I'll go to the scientific literature and I'll say, okay, how much scientific research has been carried out on these mushroom species? And you put those two together and you come up with 10 where there's really solid evidence of traditional use and scientific research that really shows that these particular species have demonstrated very strong medicinal activities.
Yeah, a lot of them are big powerhouses for cancer, among many other things. And I know I used to take beta-glucans all the time when I was working on my own healing and getting well. I'd never realized back in the time that the mushrooms were high in beta glucan. Maybe that's why I've always craved them, right? Because when you're sick, your body's telling you what to eat.
Yeah.
But interesting, I used to take bottles and bottles and bottles of beta glucan, and whenever I would get sick, that's what I would load my body up on. So it's really interesting, and I know that now, and for many years that mushrooms contain a lot of beta glucan, and as you said, they all have different amounts or maybe different kinds of beta glucan that would make maybe one better for cancer and one better for something else, and that's what I want to learn about. But I'm curious, are mushrooms adaptogens?
Oh yeah, you know what? I consider them to be one of the premier adaptogens, and the way I look at an adaptogen is it's something that is non-specific. It's something that is working in the background. They call adaptogens harmony herbs. Mm-hmm. So adaptogens are herbs that help us reach a homeostasis, help us harmonize our bodies. And I love that idea because I think that is a good way to look at health. Health, sometimes people get into this idea and use these metaphors of it's a fight. And we're fighting this or we're fighting that, and it's like I don't really like that metaphor at all. Yeah. I think basically it's back to kind of this balance. And this is not to say that we may not be struggling at times against something, but again, everybody's just trying to get along here. But sometimes, for some reason, we get out of balance, and there's disease, and then we have to try and find out why and bring ourselves back into balance. And as you know, I mean, so much disease these days is caused by poor diets.
Yes,
and that's just such a classic example of people willfully going out of balance and feeding themselves foods and drinks that are doing them harm. And so when you actually remove those from their diet and give them a healthy diet, then they start to come right back into balance. And that's what we're after. And that's where adaptogens are so interesting. And that's why, for me, number one, food should be our medicine. And two, mushrooms are just one of those foods. And I think one of the foods that's really missing in the Western diet. It's been in the Asian diet for thousands of years. We're missing it in the Western diet, and it's primarily because of these polysaccharides. We're not getting enough of them. We're not getting enough of these really good, beneficial polysaccharides, which are the beta glucans. So that's to me one of the things that makes a mushroom such a great food.
And does it matter if it's eaten cooked or raw? Because being a person who eats a lot of raw food, is there a danger to eating mushrooms raw? Are they better cooked or are they better raw?
Well, you know what? I personally think that mushrooms are better cooked. And one of the reasons is that, I was talking about the beta glucans in the cell walls. Well, the cell walls of mushrooms also have a compound called chitin, and chitin is a structural part of that cell wall, but it binds up those beta glucans and makes mushrooms a little bit less digestible because of that. Mushrooms, here's kind of the thing about a mushroom too, is that it used to be that mushrooms were thought to be non-foods, and that was because they were low in calories of all things. So if a food doesn't have calories, then a classical nutritionist would say, well, there's nothing there for us. But the fact is mushrooms have a good amount of protein. They're mostly carbohydrate, but those carbohydrates are high quality carbohydrates. They're the beta glucans. They also contain mannitol, which is a very slow acting carbohydrate, a great carbohydrate. And the other thing is, and this goes back to the digestibility factor, they are very high in fiber. Mm-hmm. So a mushroom is feeding your microbiome. And because of that fiber, a lot of it indigestible fiber, essentially that's why um, the mushroom should be cooked just to kind of break down the cell walls a little bit. So I think you're much better off cooking the mushroom
That's good to
than
know.
eating it raw. I think definitely, and one of the other ways of cooking it too is making a soup with it as well.
Right.
To me, I look at a soup and I think a soup is in a sense like a very deep tea, and when we're drinking teas or even soup, we are actually consuming a water extract where we've pulled out the water soluble compounds. And of course, with a soup, we're also consuming whatever it is that we put into that soup as well. So it's a great way to get, I think, all of the nutrients out of whatever it is that we're consuming.
That's good advice. And if someone is sick or really needing to heal something, would it be better? And what I'm guessing what I'm asking is, what's the difference between taking a medicinal mushroom in powder or capsule in your smoothie versus eating them in your diet? Is it just way more potent when you do it in the powder because you can get so much more of those beta glucans?
Well, you know what? The way I look at it, it's like how many times have you heard people say, "Okay, chew your food"?
Yeah, I tell myself
Well,
that every meal.
yeah, and you're kind of like, look, I'll be here all night if I really have to chew my food. So, the fact is that as we consume food, we're not necessarily breaking it down to the point where we're getting everything out of it, and that's why certainly a lot of it goes through as fiber, and a lot of it does not. We don't pull everything out of it, and so when I talk to people about mushrooms and getting the benefits out of them, I'm a real big fan of, look, put mushrooms into your diet. But when we get mushrooms, or I think almost anything, in a fine powder, that gives us so much more surface area. So what's in there, I think, is just, we're going to get 100% of what's in there. So to me, having that mushroom in a powder form, and the thing is that we manufacture extracts from the mushrooms. We manufacture some that are just a one-to-one. They still have all the fiber in them, in a powder form, of course. But then we'll sometimes concentrate those mushrooms with, let's say, 4 pounds of mushrooms would be 1 pound of concentrate, or 10 pounds of mushrooms. So there, in terms of supplementation, you could be taking just 1 gram of this powder and be getting a lot of that mushroom without consuming so much of it. And that powder, I think, having all that surface area will give you 100% of the benefits that you might not get from eating mushrooms.
Yeah, that's usually the case with a lot of these powders, because they're so concentrated that you can do faster work with less.
Well, yeah, with less, and some people, they're not going to eat all the mushrooms that you'd like them to eat.
Or you can't even afford to buy that much of a certain kind of mushroom. Some of them are very expensive,
Yeah, that's true. And although I say to people, I can sit down and I can in a sitting I could eat as much as 200 grams of mushrooms, and that's like 8 ounces of mushrooms in a single sitting. I could do that.
I could do
easily.
that. Yeah.
That's not a problem for me at all. But for some people, that would be, oh my, because that's, let's face it, 100 grams of fresh mushrooms, and they're 90% water. That's 10 grams of dry mushroom. That's a lot when you're thinking that most supplements you might be taking 1 or 2, maybe 3 grams of that. But if it's concentrated, you're going to get the benefits of, let's say, 100 grams or more of the actual mushroom, and in a form that I think is much more what I would call bioavailable.
Mm-hmm. That's the important part, for sure. Time to take a break and get a nice drink of pure distilled water. And if you haven't checked out my website, please go check it out, because the links to the water distiller that I use and the Good State Ionic Minerals now are so easy to find there. You'll find them under the shop button. You'll see there's 2 tabs. Choose the favorites tab and you'll see them right there. And I'm really excited to tell you that over time, I'm going to be adding some homeopathic detox products. So check out my site today and be sure to sign up with your email address and get that free video of me making my very favorite living bread recipe. It's really the best I ever had. So if you sign up on the homepage in that little box, you're going to get a link for that recipe video. All right, you guys, I love you so much, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with you on this 2 times a month basis via my emails and blog. And if I can, I'll do that special treat for you in the alternate weeks. But for now, I just have to get used to this schedule. But also be sure to follow me on Facebook if you're not already, and follow me on Instagram. Why not? You never know. I'm really going to start doing a lot of stuff, you guys. All right, now back to the show. So let's talk about these mushrooms. Maybe let's start. Is there one you want to start with, or do you want me to pick?
Well, why don't you pick?
Let's start with, I have a feeling one of your favorites is reishi.
You know what? Reishi is my favorite. And what's interesting about reishi is that the history of reishi goes back thousands of years, and it's in art, Chinese art. It's in Chinese mythologies.
Wow.
It's called the mushroom of immortality. I mean, it's called the good luck mushroom. It's something that is deep in Chinese culture, and for good reason, because reishi not only has very high levels of beta glucans, but it also has other compounds called triterpenoids. And reishi, if you ever try reishi, actually either the mushroom or open up a capsule to taste the powder, reishi is bitter. So that bitter flavor comes from these triterpenoids, and these triterpenoids are very, very good for the liver. So can you imagine you want to sort of help your liver do a cleanse and work to its highest potential? Reishi is very good for the liver, besides having these immunologically active beta glucans. So for me, I always tell people, if there's one mushroom that you want to take as a supplement, because you can't eat reishi. Reishi's it's a beautiful mushroom, very beautiful. It's got a kidney shape. It's red.
So pretty.
It's so pretty, but it is woody. It's like a piece of wood when you dry it out. So it's not something that you're going to cook up and eat for dinner. Doesn't work that way. You can brew it up into a tea, but reishi is not an edible mushroom per se,
Right.
Only in the tea form. But that to me is the premier medicinal mushroom. And again, for liver, for blood cleansing, for any sort of immunological issues, you're feeling kind of like you don't recover as well. Maybe you get some of these colds or flus too often. Having reishi there in the background to help you out, I think that's the key to it. It is the premier medicinal mushroom.
Okay, and next would be chaga.
Chaga.
Chaga, chaga, chaga.
Chaga, 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 chaga. Chaga is such a weird form. It's not a true mushroom. Chaga grows off the sides of birch trees, and chaga actually is a tree pathogen. So the mycelium gets into the tree at a certain stage. Let's just say what happens with a lot of trees is a branch breaks off, or something hits the bark and opens it up like an open wound. Spores then will get onto that. They will germinate, and the next thing you know, you've got this mycelium growing up inside the tree.
Wow.
And so at a certain point, what happens with those birch trees is that as that mycelium gets up and becomes strong, the birch tree will push out the sides of the tree. Instead of going straight up, they'll kind of push them out, and a lot of the woody tissue. But what will happen is then they will form what's called a canker on the outside of that tree. And if you look at a chaga, it is this black, irregular, very gnarly looking thing. And you're just like, what is that thing? It's, well, we call it a mushroom. We actually term it a sclerotia, although it's not a true sclerotia, but it's not a true mushroom in the sense of a stem and a cap and things like that. It's this gnarly thing. It has been used for hundreds of years in Eastern Europe and Russia as a folk remedy for different cancers. But where I think people should use it, and one of the other uses of it has been for stomach issues. So if you have any kinds of, let's say you've got irritable bowel syndrome, or you've got Crohn's disease, or some type of issue like that, I really tell people, give chaga a try. See whether chaga doesn't help you with those issues. That's where I would be using the chaga. I wouldn't worry about necessarily the other side of it. We test all of our mushroom products for beta glucans. We have this amazing test for fungi for beta glucans. Chaga is very low in beta glucans, maybe around 10%.
Wow.
To give you an idea, reishi is 50%.
Wow.
Chaga is only 10%, but chaga has triterpenoids similar to reishi, not in the same quantities, but again, look for using chaga for stomach issues. And the other thing I'd say about chaga is Deborah, there's so much hype out there these days around different herbal products.
There is.
Chaga right now, there is so much hype about chaga, and I just tell people, look, calm down. It doesn't do everything in the world. It's not a panacea, no matter what the chaga sellers tell you, but it is definitely a good medicinal mushroom, but it doesn't do everything.
Yeah, what they're claiming anyway.
Oh my God, the claims are astounding, and they just go on and on and on. You're just kind of like, okay, is there anything this thing doesn't do? If you listen to the hypesters on the internet, it's just so again, for people that want to try chaga, think of it as something that could help you with your stomach issues. I mean, they've even got studies of chaga and ulcers where it seems to help with ulcers too. So definitely give chaga a try for any sort of. So
that's good to kind of keep it to the stomach and because the other
alimentary canal. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's good. And then what about cordyceps? I know cordyceps is more respiratory because I've used it in the past before, but tell us about cordyceps.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah, respiratory. And cordyceps is in China, and the wild-crafted cordyceps, which is what's traditionally been used, is called caterpillar fungus. And they also call it winter worm summer grass, because what happens is in the pastures, the high pastures of Tibet, this caterpillar in the fall will dig itself a nice little burrow and go down into the ground and hibernate. But it doesn't realize that it's got cordyceps spores on it. And so as it hibernates, those spores germinate, and the mycelium of cordyceps will consume the whole inside of this caterpillar.
Wow.
And then in the summer, the following year, rather than the caterpillar waking up and flying away as a moth, a cordyceps comes right out of its head and springs up like a blade of grass. It's not a mushroom like organism or fungus. It's like a blade of grass. And so when they go out and harvest it, they're out there on their hands and knees trying to find this thing. And when they find this little blade of grass cordyceps, they will dig it up and they will pull this caterpillar out. So the wild-crafted cordyceps that's been used traditionally is actually this caterpillar with this little blade-like fungus attached to it. That's why they call it caterpillar fungus and winterworm summer grass. That reached a point where it was being sold for $20,000 a dried kilogram.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
nobody can afford that, right? I mean, one of these caterpillar fungi was being sold for like $10, and one of them is not going to do you any good
Anything,
whatsoever.
right?
Yeah. So what's really interesting though, and especially for me as a mushroom grower by trade, is that now we actually are growing cordyceps. We're growing a different species called Cordyceps militaris. We don't grow it on insects. And when we grow it up, we harvest just that little blade. And the most interesting thing about this particular Cordyceps species, which has been used interchangeably with this caterpillar fungus, this particular species is bright orange.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've seen it. And I love that it's vegan now.
Yes, exactly.
That's so
You don't have
cool.
to
I was
eat the
thinking while you were
caterpillar.
saying that about the caterpillar, like, ooh, a caterpillar head cordyceps, that's kind of gross.
Well, the funny thing is when I tried to introduce the caterpillar fungus to the supplement industry back in 1991, all I got was people looking at me like, do you really think that our customers are going to eat caterpillars?
Yeah, right.
And they were like,
Exactly.
most of our customers are vegetarian. What were you
Right.
thinking?
That's true. That's funny. And so cordyceps, is it more for respiratory? Like I said, what else? What are some of the big
Well,
uses?
it is for respiratory, and one of the other major ways that they used it was for neurasthenia, which is weakness when you're trying to recover from a long illness. So people who were weak, they were fatigued, they didn't have a lot of energy, they just didn't seem to break out of that illness that they had. They'd recovered, but they just couldn't fully recover. That's when they gave them cordyceps. And getting back to the respiratory angle, part of that is oxygen utilization, and there does seem to be the ability for cordyceps to help us with our oxygen utilization, a higher level of being able to use oxygen. What they do now, for the most part, which is interesting, is here in the West, most of the companies that purchase the cordyceps will put it into athletic-oriented products. So kind of like the athlete's edge in a sense of fatigue. Okay, if this helps with fatigue, or if it helps with energy, as the thinking goes, then that's where they will use cordyceps, and I think that's one of the primary uses for it. But I mean, it is helping in so many different ways, like the others. It also has a very good level of beta glucans in it, so it's also going to help you immunologically. Cordyceps is really a great mushroom, and the interesting thing is now with that we're growing cordyceps. Now instead of paying like $10 for this one little caterpillar fungus that probably doesn't even weigh 1 gram. At retail, we have a retail line. At retail, we'll sell 60 grams of this cordyceps for, I think, $30 or something
Yeah,
like that.
wow, that's great. And
Yeah, so
it reminds me when you were saying that, you, especially this season with that bug going around, whatever, if it's a flu, I don't know, but it's a respiratory thing, and everybody's got this cough for 2 months and they're really exhausted, and they say, I've never
yikes.
had anything so bad. I mean, makes me think everybody should just get online and buy some cordyceps, because it's
That's right.
exactly what you're saying. It's like this weakness after a prolonged illness, and it started with a
Yeah.
respiratory infection. Many people it's even going into pneumonia, but it's seemingly kind of viral because antibiotics aren't helping a lot of people that are telling me.
Yeah.
So this
That's
is kind of the year of the cordyceps, I
That
think.
might be right. Yeah, and that's right. And what's interesting too, I wish that it were being grown in North America in massive quantities, because you can actually buy fresh cordyceps now. This our orange militaries. You can buy it now in the markets, the food markets in China. And I had a plate of this cooked up in one of the meals in my last trip over there. and it was absolutely delicious. And they
Wow.
just looked like little small noodles.
How
And here you
cool.
have a plate of all of these small noodle-like cordyceps, and the flavor was just delightfully mushroomy.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right, and the next one I want to talk about, and I want to ask you some questions about, is lion's mane. Now, I'll tell you that what I know it's a brain mushroom, and I know it has to do with nerves and the nervous system. The reason that I'm really interested in this one is because my partner Lloyd has a pain syndrome. He has had for almost 12 years. It's 11 years now and something. And he had a surgery and went on his neck, like a fusion surgery. And when he woke up, he had these horrible nerve pains in his feet that we can't seem to get to go away. So
Yikes.
we don't know what it's from. They don't know what it's from, but it's definitely nerve pains in his feet, and it's not the typical kind of neuropathy like diabetic neuropathy. So I tried lion's mane, and I would put it in our smoothie. Maybe I didn't try it long enough, because that's the problem. Sometimes you try something for a month. If you don't feel any difference, you think, okay, next. But sometimes you really need to try things for a year, especially nerve stuff, because nerves grow really slowly. But now, after meeting you and looking at the line of products and stuff, I also realized that there's a lot of bad products out there that are not doing what they're saying, and they're not
I know.
right. So
And
it could have been
that's
something like that.
Yeah, and that's the first question I always ask people, because, they'll tell me they're taking this great mushroom product, and I say, okay, what brand? And they tell me, and I say, I hate to say this, but it's just a myceliated grain, and that's an issue maybe we'll get to. But
Yeah.
that's something that unfortunately a lot of people have been taking what they think was a mushroom product that wasn't actually a mushroom product. But let me talk to about lion's mane for a
Yeah,
minute.
let's tell us about it.
Actually, it's been shown to stimulate what's called nerve growth factor. A nerve growth factor is a protein molecule that we have that stimulates the production of neurites and neurons. So that stimulates nerve cell regrowth, and nerve cells are constantly being destroyed and being regenerated or generated, let's say. So there's, it's just the way our organism works, is that the cells die off and new ones are generated, like a lot of things in our body. And so anything that sort of stimulates the growth of new neurites is a good thing. And where they've sort of done some of the clinical research has been in older populations. There's some good clinical work out of Japan where they've had control groups, and like say 2 groups of 30 people. One group takes the lion's mane, the other does not. They give them a battery of cognitive tests, and then after 90 days retest them, and they find out that the group taking the lion's mane actually scores better on the tests. And then after 30 days of not taking it anymore, that same group that did better on the test falls back down to the baseline. So they, and we don't often get these types of clinical trials for herbal products, but that's one of a couple that are out there that seem to demonstrate that this effect of lion's mane is real. So that's really interesting, especially for people who seem to be having issues with cognitive decline, and as we get older, memory issues become more acute. And what did you say your name was again? I forget.
Right.
So it's like those kind of things, and so I would say it would definitely be worth your husband trying. Certainly something that is a verified, absolutely genuine lion's mane product. And the other thing I would say about these things in general, mushroom supplements in general, and that is, look, don't follow the label instructions, and because they're always telling you a serving size that is probably not enough.
Right.
Don't fall into that pattern. In this clinical trial, actually, they were taking 3 grams of just the dried lion's mane powder, which and my rule of thumb for all mushroom products is 2 to 5 grams of dried mushroom or equivalent, meaning if I have 5 grams of dried mushroom powder, a 10-to-1 extract would mean I would take 500 milligrams because it's 10 times as strong.
Okay.
So that's my rule of thumb with it. So again, most of the products will say, oh yeah, take 2 capsules, 500 milligrams. I'll give you 1 gram of this. Okay, so you would take 4 capsules instead, or maybe more. Just don't take a too small amount. And look, when you have these products out there telling you how much you should be taking every day, does that mean a 120-pound woman should be taking the same as a 220-pound man?
Right. Or a person with cancer versus a person without, or a person with nerve problems versus a person without. If you're using it to heal, then you definitely need to take it in a load, especially when you're talking about something from nature that's not, there's no toxicity in overloading.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's where too, I certainly if a person has a life-threatening illness or a serious illness, I always say, look, get together with your healthcare practitioner, and hopefully that's a holistic practitioner that is looking at the whole picture and able to look at every aspect of their body, and then talk to them about these different things and what you should be taking and how much you should be taking. What happens oftentimes when people are ill is they will end up with like 20 different supplements that people have told them to take, and it's costing them $250 or more a month, and they're just loaded down, and they don't know what works and what doesn't work, but they're just going to take a shotgun approach and go to town.
Right. That's so true. So, and what about, do you want to speak about turkey tail? I don't know if it's one of the mushrooms you grow or not. We can move on if not.
No, I'll speak to that for a second here. What's really interesting, and the thing with turkey tail is that, one, it's not a mushroom that is being cultivated. So all the turkey tail, and including the chaga is not cultivated. It's wild crafted. Our chaga comes out of Russia, actually, and the turkey tail is wild crafted as well. And it in our beta glucan testing, it's interesting because I was saying how reishi was so high in beta glucans at 50%. A little bit higher than reishi is turkey tail.
Wow.
And so this is one of the things that with our testing program, I always find so interesting, because you look at the fact of how these mushrooms are all immunologically active and used for immunological issues, and then you look how it lines up with the beta glucans, and I just think, wow, that it lines up fairly well. And turkey tail has been actually developed into a couple of drugs in China and Japan, and they're used normally the way they're used as what we call an adjuvant. So if you're going through chemotherapy or radiation, your immune system is being torn down, so you would be taking these with those protocols to help your immune system cope a little better. And that's the way, when they've developed these specific drugs from them in Japan and China, that's what they would do with them. They would take them along with these other standard modalities. And that's where I would say, turkey tail would be really useful, and definitely I think it's a good mushroom. And again, where it has these super high levels of beta glucans.
And I've heard that it can increase your killer T cells or macrophages, and that makes sense. That's the basic. Is that true?
That's the basic activity of the beta glucans. The beta glucans will hit a receptor site down in our small intestine, and that will stimulate the production of macrophages, NK cells, and T cells. That's how the beta glucans work.
I see, and that's why it's known for that, because it's so high in beta glucans.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
That's cool. So I want to ask you, well, first of all, is there any mushroom that you guys produce that we haven't talked about?
Well, you know what, there's a number of them, and I what I would say is my primary thoughts on medicinal mushrooms all get back to their use immunologically. And so what happens is we've talked about 5 of the different species, and each one of those 5 has a little bit of specificity to a different type of issue. But I think as we get into the others, what we're really talking about is immunological activities. And that's, again, like I say, I think that's
Right.
the primary issue or the primary activity of all medicinal mushrooms is they have these immunological actions. And the other thing too is I think people have to realize that they don't work overnight. It's not like you're taking an aspirin or you're taking an ibuprofen and that just relieves the pain or the headache or whatever. That's not how mushrooms work. They work in the background. Some people are more sensitive than others. Some people might feel some benefits after a week. Others, it may take 2, 3, 4 weeks before they feel anything. So don't expect them to work immediately. And again, they are going to be there. And this is back to the role of an adaptogen. That's how the adaptogens work too. They're in the background. They're sitting there. They're helping your body maintain a balance, or trying to bring it back into balance as best they can.
Right. That's good advice, because it is easy to, expect something fast and give up fast, and then you should have kept going for a few more months. I always feel like you have to give something 3 to 6 months, because often things have to get worse sometimes before they even get better, because if you're balancing the body out, that means you're going to be dumping some things that you got to get rid of that might not feel so good, and things have to regenerate a little bit. So there's an act in balancing. It's not just one way.
Absolutely right. And that's where I think especially if it's a serious illness or health issue, I think that's where having a practitioner involved that you can trust, a holistic practitioner, hopefully, somebody that can map out a program, because that's what a lot of people need. We all tend to get off track from time to time and are doing things that we shouldn't be doing. And it's helpful to have somebody give us some advice and help out and maybe help to organize a path forward.
Yeah. So just a couple little things. Is there a mushroom that's really good, like anti-aging or for beauty?
Well, you know what? In terms of anti-aging, certainly reishi is considered to be the true anti-aging. But there is a mushroom out there right now that's really starting to, in terms of beauty, in the sense of skin and things like that, which is tremella. Tremella is something that they've utilized in that way, topically as well as eating it. It's becoming, I think that's going to be the one that you start to hear about very soon. And I'm seeing a lot more. Certainly we're selling a lot more of it now. We've got a couple of companies that are really putting it out there in a major way. And so it's one, and it's a really interesting mushroom, because it is kind of it looks almost like a flower. It's a very beautiful mushroom, but it's kind of, it doesn't have a cap or a stem. It's just very flowery and kind of, what do I want to say? I want to say kind of spongy, but it's a different texture entirely in terms of when you're eating. It's almost a little bit rubbery or something. It's one of those things, if you're eating it fresh, you have to gain a taste for. I mean, there's a few others like that in China, mushrooms that are like that. And in the beginning, when I was first being introduced to them, I was like, oh, these are kind of weird, and they're kind of chewy. And, in Asia, Deborah, the Chinese eat all sorts of things that we would never even think about eating. And I have adapted to that, and I have learned in some cases to like some of these things, but it's just sort of interesting how different cultures, and you think in China, okay, here's a country that's been through so many famines in its history that they have eaten everything. So they have a better understanding of what is worthwhile and what isn't.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the importance you mentioned about other products being made from mycelium, but maybe tell the listeners how they can determine. And I know you guys make the powders, not so much. You sell your powders to. You have a particular company that you sell to, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about how does a listener know if they're really getting a product that has any beta glucans in it, and
Sure.
What can they do, and maybe even maybe I would love you to say, I'm going to put the links in the notes anyway, the name of the website of the product where you guys sell your powders to.
Sure. Do you ever eat tempeh?
I do, but I'm doing lot more raw, so I haven't been doing soy for a long while.
Okay, well, so you know what tempeh is
Yep.
then, right? Okay, and do you know what tempeh is made of?
Well, it's fermented, but I know it's fermented soy, but I don't know beyond that.
Okay, so that's kind of where the most people stop because they don't really know what it is fermented with. Tempeh is actually fermented with a fungus.
Mm.
So when you look at that block of tempeh, it's cooked soybeans and they put a fungus on it, and that fungus, what you see there is white mycelium.
I see.
So when you're eating tempeh, you're actually eating mycelium. Now most of that tempeh block is the soy. You know, when you cut it, you can see the bean in there and everything. Most of it is soy. Well, there are companies in the United States that produce mycelium and they grow it on sterilized grain. And that might be rice, it might be oats, or it might be other grains. And they'll do all of this in a plastic bag where they're sterilize the grain. They'll put the mycelium into the sterile grain. The mycelium will grow out and it will cover all of these grains like tempeh. But then instead of it being a food, what they will do is they will dry it, grind it to a powder, and then they will sell it as mushroom.
Oh.
So what you have is you have mycelium grown on sterile grain like tempeh, and tempeh is a great food. But these products, they make the claim that it's actually mushroom. So believe it or not, 75% of the mushroom products in the marketplace are this myceliated grain product.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yes.
And what's really horrible about that, so many people are going to try it and say medicinal mushrooms don't work.
That's absolutely right. And the issue is that when you look at the label on the front of it, it'll say reishi mushroom, maitake mushroom, and then they'll have a picture of the mushroom. Sometimes it'll say made with 100% organic mushrooms. And you turn it over, some of the companies will put mycelium on the back side. Some of the companies in the fine print, in the other, will say myceliated oats, myceliated rice. But a lot of companies will not, and they will not reveal the grain in there. And they will even, on the backside, you turn it over and they'll say mushroom or fruiting body.
Oh, that's so terrible.
So it's a total, what I call a bait and switch. And there's two ways to find that out. One of which is if it says made in the USA, unfortunately, it is this myceliated grain product. And the reason is that it's very expensive to grow mushrooms in the United States. You can grow mushrooms and sell them as fresh, but as soon as you dry them out, and supplements are a dried powder, well, a mushroom, like most vegetables, is 90% water. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting $5 for that pound of mushrooms as a grower, now you have to get $50 for the dried mushroom. So that's the issue. And so they grow this myceliated grain, tempeh-like material, and it is really cheap to produce. And they sell it as mushroom, and you have all of these people taking these mushroom so-called products.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's not mushroom at all.
Oh, that's terrible.
So look at the label closely. If you see those, and if you're really into a cool little experiment, buy a bottle of iodine. And if you've got a product you're not sure, take a couple of capsules, pour it out into a quarter cup of water, stir it up really good, put 10 drops of iodine in. Iodine will react with starch, which is what is in the grains, and it will turn the liquid black.
So if it turns black, you got a fake.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. It is really an absolute shame, and I try to alert people to this because, unfortunately, even the companies. I mean, some of the companies that put out these products, they will buy it from the companies that are producing it, and the company producing it tells all these companies, oh yeah, we've got mushrooms, we're selling you mushrooms, and so the company puts out the product, and they don't even know. Now, the producers of these products put out retail products, and they know, but they still don't list it as not being mushroom. They still call it mushroom when it's not mushroom, and it's an absolute shame.
Oh, that is. So the company that you sell most of your powders to, it's called, is it Real Mushrooms? That's what it's called, right? Real Mushrooms?
Well, Nammex, which is our company, is a raw material supplier. So we sell to many, many different companies who put our products out under their label, but we have a retail division which is called Real Mushrooms, and we sell mostly on the internet, and it's realmushrooms.com, and that's where you could go and get our retail products, and you can rest assured our products are 100% genuine mushroom and nothing else.
Well, that's good. That's really good, because it's always better to have at least one suggestion where you can get the real stuff. And I know you sell the powders and the capsules, and if you do the powders and you put them, say, because some of them I know have some taste that people put them in coffees, or I've even had hot chocolates. Of course, now I probably had a fake, but I didn't know this before your company. But anyway, if I want to take a teaspoon of, say, reishi and stir it into a hot chocolate, could I do that, and would it work okay putting it in heated hot water, or could you put it in a soup or a smoothie and be just as beneficial?
Oh, you can do all of those. In fact, with our Real Mushrooms brand, we encourage people. We say, look, put it in coffee, put it in tea, put it in a smoothie. I mean, the products came out in pouches initially. They're also out in capsules now because a couple of them, like reishi, is very bitter. I put reishi into my coffee in the morning. I like black coffee, so I put it in, and to me, it just blends in beautifully. It has its own bitter flavor, but that's fine because my coffee's got kind of that bitter flavor to it. So I like it there. Some of the mushroom powders are very good tasting, so they go right into your smoothie. Fine. Don't put reishi into your smoothie unless you like a real bitter smoothie. So they can get reishi in capsules if they like. And again, it's just a matter of some of the powders taste okay, and a lot of the younger generation in their 20s and 30s, the smoothie a day is as a common thing where they've got different supplements that they put into their smoothie, and they drink their smoothie every day. And that's one of the reasons that we put it out in just a bulk powder form for people. And
right.
Not only that, you know what, Deborah, I love the whole pouching thing that's out there now. I love seeing stuff in pouches. They're so simple. They're so easy. There's not a plastic bottle that you get at the end of it, or a glass bottle. I mean, in terms of shipping, in terms of just the fact of having that pouch to me, is just a great way to put out a product.
And it is tricky because some people are picky about taste. So it's nice that you say that reishi is bitter. I know some people that put it in their smoothie, but then maybe there's someone that's not as picky about that. But I wonder if you could hide it in a hot chocolate, because
you probably could. Yeah, you absolutely could. It might go into a hot chocolate just fine.
I'll have to give that one a try, because
give it a shot. Again, our reishi extract that we're selling is, you taste that and you go, oh my God, this tastes like medicine, because it is a powerful, powerful bitter flavor. Now, I've tasted and consumed reishi extract for so many years, 30 years now, that that for me, it's like, yeah, wow, this tastes great.
Yeah, you know it. And when you say extract, you're talking more like a tincture.
No, I'm talking a powdered extract.
A powdered extract. Okay, so you're the realmushrooms.com, they sell powders or capsules, right?
That's right, powders and capsules,
okay.
Either one.
And then what other of your products are bitter that if someone is weird about taste, maybe they should get in capsule?
Well, I would say lion's mane tastes good. I'd say cordyceps tastes very mushroomy. I like the flavor of cordyceps. Chaga, to me, is earthy. Some people don't mind earthy. Me, earthy's a little bit too earthy.
Mm-hmm.
So chaga for me is not one that I necessarily like or would put into a drink of any sort. So for those top four, that's kind of what I would say. Okay. Turkey tail, I think, is also maybe a little bit on the earthy side as well.
Yeah, so either you got to stick them in a strong hot chocolate or take them as capsules.
That's right. Yeah.
And if somebody really wanted to make progress with something, they have an ailment, whether it's cancer or pain or nerve problems or a stressed nervous system, and they did the powder, what would you recommend? Just like, is it go by the teaspoons? Like how many teaspoons a day? What would you to get a healthy dose of it?
Well, you know what I think a teaspoon of our powders is about a gram, so you'd probably be taking 2 teaspoons.
Okay, so 2 to 3 probably.
Probably, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and again, I mean, a lot of people have little kitchen scales. They're really cheap, and I find them really great in terms of weighing out small amounts of things. And then you can like weigh a teaspoon, and you go, oh yeah, okay, that's what a teaspoon is. And so you sort of know, because each one, they're not all the exact same density. Some are a little bit denser than others, so it's not going to be that exact, but generally speaking, a teaspoon should be around a gram.
Okay, and generally you're wanting, for anything you're trying to really heal, you're wanting 3 grams a day?
Yeah, again, my recommendation is 2 to 5 grams is where you should be.
Okay, that sounds good.
2 to 5 grams, yeah.
And my last question, because I know you talked about growing and how China's really big on growing, but I just want to say this because I know that's where you get some of your mushrooms, right? And a lot of people have, including myself, I'm always nervous about food coming from China. So can you tell me that are their standards very strict, and is it all organic? And I'm curious what you have learned. You've been to China so many times with these mushroom farms. How clean is it?
Well, you know what? We should all be concerned about our food or supplements, where they come from, and certainly China has had its issues. I went to China all through the 90s. In 1997, I took the main organic certification organization in the United States to China with me, and I organized the very first organic certification workshop for mushrooms in China, 1997.
Wow.
All our products that are grown in China are grown way back in the mountains, back in areas that are quite clean. The mushrooms are certified by high quality German certifiers. They're not Chinese certifiers or anything like that. But Deborah, my feeling on the issue in general is look, there are millions of tons of chemicals poured on crops in the United States every year. I mean, as well as I do that there are certain places where if food was being grown like in the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, you would not want to be eating it, right?
For sure.
It's like that's just how it is. It's like, there's places where the water, I mean, would you want to drink water out of the Mississippi River? It's like there's a lot of pollution out there that we all have to be aware of. And that's why I totally support organic agriculture. And when I buy my fruits and vegetables, I shop at my local small natural food store, and I'm shopping organic for everything because I believe in that 100%. And we're all taking in chemicals that we don't realize on a daily basis, and any way that we can consume fewer of those chemicals is really important, because we just don't know what those are doing to us, and so better not to consume them if we have that choice So I just want to promote organics to anybody out there that's not eating organics. Please support the organic movement. It's really important. All our products, yes, are grown in China. We test them for pesticides, for heavy metals, for everything before they leave China, and then after they reach North America, we test them again. So they're tested twice. We can't sell them unless they meet the standards that the industry has put out there.
And yours are all organic, right?
That's correct. They're
Yeah,
all
that's
organically
fantastic.
certified. Yeah.
I know. I've read all on your site, and it's really nice to see how much testing and that you can be assured that you're getting the level of a real mushroom in there and the nutrients. And so that's why it's sometimes better to just say what the company that you know is good, and maybe there's others out there that are good, but if you don't know and you're a consumer that wants to buy mushrooms, that's scary because there's just so many ripoffs.
Oh yeah, and the worst part about it to me is that the companies that are selling these myceliated grain products, they will say organic, kosher, vegan, GMP certified. They will have all those certifications there, but it doesn't mean anything if they're just selling you grain starch.
Wow, that's really terrible. I learned a lesson today, that's for sure. Yeah, I always know this. Look, I look at everywhere else I'm buying my food from, but until you know that most people out there today probably didn't know myceliated from the mushrooms is bad, and not
Yes.
medicinal. So this is why I love doing my show. I can keep teaching people more and more stuff, and I learn myself. And it's all about, I always say, knowledge is power and health is freedom, right?
I totally agree, and being an educator is so important, and there's so many issues around that, and people need to know. My feeling is, look, I'm going to give you this information, then you make your own decisions, but basically I want you to be an educated consumer.
Exactly. And if you want to be sure, realmushrooms.com, that's where I'm buying mine from. So thank you. That's so cool. That was a great time today to just learn all this stuff about mushrooms. And it's good. It's really interesting because, it's like the power of something that most people can relate to of being dangerous, like spores, like we were talking about, to the amazing benefits of medicinal mushrooms. Because I know there's a lot of studies out there now how they've helped heal with cancers and all kinds of autoimmune diseases and nerve problems and brain issues. It's becoming more and more in the research area. So we've got a long way to go, but it's starting.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I'm really happy that mushrooms have finally come of age, so to speak, because I started my career as a commercial mushroom grower on a very large farm in 1973. And I started my company Nammex in 1989, and at that point, no company had a medicinal mushroom product in their product line. It was all green herbs. So for all of a sudden mushrooms to reach a point where they're being noticed is something that's very encouraging.
That's cool. So any information that people want to find on them through any blogs or any research that you guys post, is it on the realmushrooms.com site or is there another site?
Well, there is information on that, but come to our larger site, Nammex, Nammex.com. We've got so much information there. I've also got a couple of great slideshows that show how we grow our mushrooms and how we process them. So there's a lot of good information there. So please come to the Nammex.com website and check it out.
Okay, great. Thank you so much today, Jeff, for joining me. And it's been really fascinating to hear about the spectacular fungi and how healing they truly are. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Deborah.
And you have a great day.
You too.
Wow, you guys, I think that was one of my all-time favorites. So interesting to me how nature has really given us all our medicines right in our plants. This is why eating plants is so healing. They are our medicines. They give us all we need. But sadly, what do? We push pharmaceuticals instead of eating and drinking our medicines from our foods, herbs, and our spices. mushroom powders are like a super food powder to me. If you haven't tried them, now you can finally try one that has real mushrooms in it, not like what I did. I'm ordering mine today since I know I had a fake one when I tried it. Actually, I've taken mushroom powder since then, but it was in smaller doses, and I'm really looking forward to doing it in a healing dose. I think I'm going to try the reishi and the chaga, and then I'm going to get some of the lion's mane for Lloyd because of the nerve, regeneration abilities that lion's mane has. The big thing is just finding a way, I think, to get them to taste good, because that makes you be able to do them on a regular basis, right? Maybe I'll try the soup because that feels like the answer for those really bitter ones like reishi and chaga. But I'll have to experiment and I'll let you know. But you too experiment, okay? And let me know your favorite recipe for taking your mushroom powder. Jeff is truly an expert, and he's really doing this work his whole life long, and he's been all over, even to China, just to find the best source of organic mushrooms. I'm so happy to have found him, and thank you, Jeff, for all the work you did to get us these pure powders. And by the way, you guys, don't forget to send me any subjects that you want to learn more about, because between doing my blogs, videos, and podcasts, and all kinds of content that I'm going to be bringing to you, I want to know what you want to learn about or what you're confused about. So be sure to write me and let me know that, okay? Geez, it was a long one today. I know you guys must be tired, so I think that's enough for today. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed this one, my podcast family. But I know that you know what time it is, right? Yep, it's time to say goodbye. Vidal has spoken. Remember, you heal with a plant-powered diet, homeopathy, detoxing, and of course, medicinal mushrooms. Until next time, peace, be healthy, be free, live life.